Here we'll do an example of distance, rate, and time with direct proportions. We are told that we can complete a 60-mile journey in 1.5 hours. Then we're asked how long it would take to complete a 240-mile journey at the same rate. First, we'll notice in the first sentence that we have 60 miles with 1.5 hours. We can write this as a ratio. We'll make a space for miles and a space for hours. We'll write that we have 60 miles and put that in a ratio with 1.5 hours. We've said in a previous problem that when we have 1.5 as a mixed number, we can rewrite that as 1.5 because 1/2 represents 0.5. The next part asks us how long it would take us to complete a 240-mile journey. Since the question is how long, this means that we do not know time. That means that for our hours and our second ratio, we'll say x. However, we do know the miles are 240. Therefore, we now have two ratios. We're going to keep in mind that miles and hours are directly proportional. In fact, any form of distance will be directly proportional with rate or time. Anytime you have two numbers that are directly proportional, we can write ratios and do a cross product. Therefore, on the left, we'll write 60 miles and 1.5 hours. We'll set an equal sign, and then we'll say 240 miles, also on the top, and then x on the bottom. Then we'll do our cross product. We'll begin by taking the 60 multiplied by the x for 60x. We'll set this equal to 240 times 1.5. We'll start by multiplying the 240 times the 1.5 in our calculator. This gives us an answer of 360. Then we'll divide by the number next to x, that's 60. Therefore, our x is equal to 360 divided by 60. We'll divide this in our calculator as well. Our 360 is already in the calculator, so we'll press divide, and we'll say 60. This gives us an answer of 6. Since our unknown was hours, we'll mark that 6 with hours. This means a 240-mile journey would take 6 hours. Now we'll do an example with inversely proportional quantities. We're now given a question where we have 1.5 hours while driving at 60 miles per hour, and we're asked how long it would take to complete the same journey while driving at 75 miles per hour. Note that we are given hours and speed, or rate. We'll mark that the hours are time. Anytime you're measuring speed, such as miles per hour, we're going to refer to that in this class as a rate. Usually this will be in miles per hour, but it can be in kilometers per hour once you get to the next section of the class. Also note that time can be in things other than hours. You could see minutes or seconds. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because rate and time are inversely proportional and not directly proportional, which means the math is going to be different. For inversely proportional quantities, you're going to multiply them rather than divide them after you set up your ratios. Let's set up our ratios now. We'll write our time and our rate. Our time was 1.5 hours with a rate of 60 miles per hour. Place a colon in between them, and we'll remember that 1.5 is the same as 1.5, and it's better to use decimals in this situation. Now, we are asked how long it would take to complete the same journey, and this means our unknown is the time. Therefore, for our second ratio, we'll say that our time is x. The rate that goes with that unknown amount of time is 75 miles per hour. We'll write that here. Now, since we are inversely proportional, we will not do a cross product. We're going to do a straight multiplication. Therefore, rather than taking 1.5 divided by 60, we'll take 1.5 times 60, and that's only because they're inverse proportions. Then we'll put an equal sign, and then we'll take x times 75, and it doesn't matter which order you write this in. You can say 75x. Generally, by convention, we will write the number first when we set up our equations. Now, we'll take our 1.5 times our 60 and get a number. We'll go to the calculator now. We enter 1.5, press multiply, and press 60. This gives us 90. We now have 90 equals 75x. Now, since we have a number next to x, we're going to divide both sides by 75. When we divide by 75, we're going to get a decimal. So the 75 that's on the right side, since you're taking 75 over 75, that will cancel out and leave the x behind. Then we'll take 90 over 75 and get a decimal answer. Our 90 is already entered in the calculator, so we'll say divide, and then press 75 and enter. This gives us 1.2. Our x will be 1.2, and since our unknown was our hours, that's our unknown amount of time, we'll say 1.2 hours. Notice that when I wrote my answer, I wrote x on the left and the number on the right. That's opposite of how my setup looked, because on my setup, my x was on the right and my number was on the left. It turns out it doesn't really matter what order you write it in. If you had said 1.2 equals x rather than x equals 1.2, that would have been okay. The main point I want to drive home here is if your problem talks about distance, you'll use a direct proportion. That's the cross multiplication that you're used to. However, if you only have time and rate, you will not do a direct proportion. Instead, you will do an inverse proportion. And for inverse proportions, we do not set up a proportion. We instead set up a multiplication. This is a straight multiplication, not a cross product. Therefore, it's important to stop before you do any math, take a look at your units. If your units are just rate and time, but not distance, set up an inverse proportion. If your units involve distance in any way, then you can do a direct proportion.